Today we are in our studio, but we do not have our usual set behind me because we are expanding on the 5 best one light setups. Let's get into it. Hello, I'm Noah from Anything Cameras, the channel that focuses on helping you improve your filming and photography. And like I said, we're expanding on a video I made a while back called the 5 best one light setups for video or photo. And again, this does apply to video or photo. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to use those 5 setups each and talk about how I might modify the light using something to reflect the light and another cheap light to add some depth to make the shot a little bit more interesting. Because right now it looks a little bit moody maybe, but depending on the photos or the videos you're taking, that might look good. So anyway, let's just get into it. The first lighting setup is the Rembrandt. That's what we have set up right here. You can probably see the triangle of light right along my cheek. So we are going to be using a $2 poster board that I got at the dollar store, and it just has some black, I don't even know what you would call this. It's paper. It was right there with the poster board at the dollar store. It has some black so that we can block some light, and that's just spray glued on. Didn't do a very good job, so there's also some duct tape. That doesn't matter because the white will still reflect, the black will still absorb. You might notice just by going like that the difference on my face. So we are going to use this, and we are also going to use this light right here. This is a Yongnuo YN216. This was $50. I have it on a light stand, and it's just an LED light. And as you can see, it's pretty bright. So I'm actually going to dial that down quite a bit. If you didn't see the last video, which is in the cards above, this way, the Rembrandt is set up by putting the light at a 45-degree angle from your subject, a little bit above, facing them. And that just creates a negative shadow of a triangle right there. And so to modify this light, there are a couple things you can do. You can start by putting the poster board under the subject to fill in some of the shadows below and even a little bit on the side of the face. So just for example, here's what it looks like with and without. With and without. And again, that's just a white poster board. Very handy $1 or $2 piece of equipment. You could also put it more to the side, a little bit below to the side to fill in some of the shadows along this side of the face and underneath. It will tend to reduce the effect that the Rembrandt has over here a little bit more, just because it's reflecting onto the side of the face, and I'll move that out of frame. But again, here's with it, without it. With, without. Pretty big difference, right? And then you could even go straight on like this. Generally, when adding fill, reflecting light somehow, you want to make sure that the light is actually hitting the fill board or the reflector. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything. So in this case, it's at a 45-degree angle. We have a softbox on it, so it diffuses the light a little bit more and bounces it, so it's not a super direct angle of light. So some of the light is spilling onto here and then bouncing onto my face. Same thing here. The light is coming down. It's already angled downward, so it comes down, bounces up, hits my face. So then if I wanted to add another light, again, it's just $50. I can turn this on. We can have it from the side. And I'm just going to throw this filter that it came with. It's clear. It just diffuses the light a bit, softens it up. So that's a little bit softer. Now this is a fill light, so ideally it would generally be in a soft box. I don't have it in a soft box right now because I'm also going to be using it as a kicker light or hair light, or backlight it's also called. So generally I would soften this up a little bit. And you can see there's a little bit of a color difference between the two bulbs. So if you can get bulbs from the same brand, lights from the same brand, then generally they will match a little bit better. Not that big a deal in this case. Okay, so for this next part, we've adjusted the frame a little bit, and we're going to be using this light here. So I've turned it on. I've thrown a little diffuser on it. Now normally I would put a fill light in a soft box. However, for the sake of the video, I left it without a soft box, just having that diffuser. And I did that because I need to move it behind me when we use it as a hair light. So for a fill light, I would move it a little bit to the side, maybe a little bit behind. Now we could also do a technique called feathering, where you don't shine the light directly onto the subject. Instead, you shine it just past their face a little bit. So to do this, I would move it forward a bit more. I'm going to angle this up a bit, and I'm going to use the barn doors to adjust it. Of course, you would just turn the softbox. And now the light is shining just past, so it adds some fill. You can see with, without, with, that's super bright, without. So then we can use it as a hair light or a kicker light or backlight, whichever you want to call it. To do this, I'm just going to move it behind me. And again, I'm working with limited space, so this isn't ideal. However, it will work. And I'm just going to shine it onto the back of the head. And this gives separation between the subject and the background. With, without. With, without. So you could also use the reflector board or reflector to bounce light onto the back of the head. So I'm going to have Leaf come in here as my assistant. Now if you don't have an assistant, you can purchase a reflector arm. Sometimes it's called a reflector holder or stand. Newer has one for about $20. And those will mount onto light stands so that you can position reflectors or reflector boards without an assistant. You could also purchase a normal reflector. Again, Newer, great brand, not a sponsor, has a good 5-in-1 reflector for like $20. Anyway, to bounce light onto as a hair light, which won't be as powerful because it will generally be a little bit softer. You just want to position the reflector or the reflector board to be so that the subject is directly between the light and the board. And you can see that's what that looks like right now. Now if Leaf takes it away, without, with, without, with. And I can actually see the light changing on the lens of the camera. So those are a few different ways you can modify the Rembrandt light. And you could do a combination of the two. You could have the poster board for fill underneath, and you could have a kicker light in the back. So now we are on to our second light setup, and this is the butterfly light or the paramount light. Now, as I said in the last video, this would generally be used on women because it's a very soft light, very flattering, kind of a feminine look. And generally with guys, you sometimes want a harder, edgier, more contrasty, masculine look. But it depends on what the subject likes, what the photographer's style is. Just use your own judgment here. However, for those who have not watched the last video about the 5-1 light setups, this light is positioned directly in front of the subject, above, shining down, as steep an angle as you can get, basically. Not quite, a little bit of an exaggeration. You don't want a straight down light, but you get the idea. So, to modify this light, there's not a lot I would do. I wouldn't fill it because it's already so soft and filling that if I fill it from beneath, I just become chinless, and I don't have any definition in my face. However, I would consider adding a hair light or kicker light. So if I go ahead and move the light behind me again, and that just, again, adds a little bit more separation from the background, and can even define the face a little bit more because the two angles of the light contrast with each other. So this is with, and this is without. This is with, and this is without. Before I continue on to our next 3 lights, however, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can be notified every time we post a video. So now we are on our third light, which is the broad light. I know I'm doing this in a little bit different order from the one light setups video, but that's alright. So this one is different from the split light, if you remember what that is, because it's coming from a higher angle and actually a little bit farther back. So it's kind of like a reverse feather. Instead of feathering straight across, you're kind of feathering from a steeper angle, if that makes sense. So for this one, you can see there's not a lot of definition on this side of the face. So a great thing to do for this light is take your reflector board, add some light just like that. Already a big difference. You could also go a little bit more from the front. Depending on just how you angle your light, you might get a little bit more, a little less reflection here. But this is already a great way to fill in some more light. You could also go a little bit more from underneath. But because this kind of reverse feathers and doesn't get a lot of light on the top of your face already, you don't want to go from directly beneath because that's just going to make the shadows go up, if anything, instead of come down. And that looks kind of unnatural. It might not be that noticeable here in this shot, but if you have a brighter reflector, or if the light is angled more down than we have it here, you could see that effect. And with this light, a fill is a great idea, just like we did with the reflector board. If you have another softbox that's a little bit dimmer, again, I don't have a softbox on this, so it's a little bit harsh, but that adds a little bit more definition in the face. And generally, I would want it a little bit less bright because that kind of becomes the key and overpowers the broad light we have here. So now we have the split light. And as you can see, this has even more shadow on this side of the face than the broad light. And it completely splits my face in two. So this is directly beside me, directly level, not coming down at all. And so for this one, you definitely want a fill if you aren't going for some kind of super edgy, dramatic look. So we can take our fill board, put it directly beside my face, and it kind of creates some interesting shadows since you kind of have light coming from this way and this way. You could also even angle it down a little bit because that's still going to catch light and reflect it down on my face, giving a little bit more natural of a look. And again, you could go under. Same thing as with the broad light though. I think that this kind of creates unnatural look and unflattering looking shadows. Fill light is a great idea here. You already know that it's a little bit brighter and a little bit harsher than I would like, but that's all right. And if you really want an even more dramatic look, then you can add a hair or a kicker light because you're not going to get too much light on this side of the face and you're going to separate them even more and create a little bit of a halo on this side of the face around the hair, like so. So now we are on our last light, which is the loop light. And the loop light is similar to the Rembrandt light. You still have it at a 45-degree angle from the subject, but you have it higher up and angled down a little bit more. So you still have that triangle of light here, but it connects a little bit more here around the mouth and up here around the temple, but the cheek is still in shadow. So this one is kind of similar to the butterfly one in that it's very filling already, but there is a little bit more shadow on the cheek as I mentioned, and a little less shadow down below because it's not quite as high and not angled quite as steeply. So for this one, if I were to fill it, I would probably just take something that's not too reflective, so not a straight up silver reflector, something white probably, and I would put it about here, a little bit down angled, and that fills in the cheek. But that's really if you want a very, very soft light with very few shadows. I tend to like some more shadows and more definition in my lighting, so I probably wouldn't fill this one. What I haven't mentioned is actually using the black side of this to remove some light. I might even do that below with the butterfly light, and maybe with this light too. I might also remove some of the shadow. I might even remove some of the light here, because that light is being absorbed into the black. It darkens the side of the face a little bit. So without, that's a little bit brighter, right? And then if I were using this setup, I might add a fill, but same thing. This already fills in the face quite a bit. So if I added another light, it would be a hair or a kicker light, again, whichever you want to call it. So that's what that would look like. So hopefully you found this video informative. Studio lighting takes a lot of time and practice. You can't learn overnight. So just experiment a little bit, try a few of these setups, and discover what you like to do. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Yeah. So this is with. I can move that behind me, turn it on.